I found my son and granddaughter living under a bridge. I was speechless when I remembered that my daughter-in-law had said they had moved to the United Kingdom and would never come back after the fight 3 years ago. I took them home, but when my son revealed the truth about his wife, everything changed. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge. I want to know how far it has reached. I arrived in Santa Fe, New Mexico on a warm, sunny afternoon. The hotel room I rented was small, but had a tiny balcony overlooking a lively street full of people coming and going. I dragged my suitcase into a corner and stood still for a moment, gazing outside. Street singers could be heard in the distance, mixed with the laughter and chatter of tourists. I told myself this trip was meant to heal me, to forget the heavy days in Austin, where my house now held only silence and painful memories. I took my purse and walked out of the hotel toward a small town square with a murmuring fountain and cool stone benches. I sat down, quietly watching a mime perform for the crowd. I looked around, searching for a bit of joy in the faces of strangers, but my eyes stopped unintentionally at a corner behind the fountain. There, a little girl was huddled up, clutching tightly an old rag doll with only one eye left. She was thin, her bare feet dusty, her tangled hair plastered to her face with sweat. She wasn't begging for money like the other kids. She simply sat in silence, her big, sad eyes fixed on the people passing by. I don't know why, but that image squeezed my heart. There was something painfully familiar in the way she held her doll. A couple passed by, and the woman accidentally dropped a piece of cookie. The girl stared at it, her eyes shining yet full of doubt. She hesitated for a long time, as if afraid someone might see her. Then she slowly crawled forward, picked up the cookie, dusted it off carefully, and slipped it into the torn pocket of her coat. That simple gesture pierced my chest like a needle. I couldn't take it anymore. I tossed my ice cream into the nearest trash bin, stood up, and hurried to a nearby bakery. I bought 2 sweet bread rolls, still warm and fragrant, and a cup of hot chocolate. I went back to the square and approached the girl. Her parents, or so I'd been told, but my hands trembled as I offered her the bag again. The girl hesitated, then slowly reached out her thin little hand to take it. Her small, cold fingers brushed mine, and then she whispered something that shattered my entire world. "Grandma, is that really you?" Her voice was weak and trembling, yet so clear that I couldn't pretend I'd misheard. I jerked my hand back as if burned. My heart pounded wildly, my mind spun. I stood up immediately, stepped back, and forced an awkward smile. "You're mistaken, sweetheart. My granddaughter lives in the United Kingdom with her parents." I couldn't bring myself to look into her eyes again. That sad yet hopeful look seemed to beg me not to leave. I turned and walked away quickly, trying to escape the strange feeling that crushed my chest. I kept repeating to myself that it couldn't be her. How could it possibly be? But the girl's frail voice still followed me, echoing behind my back. "Grandma, don't go. Grandma." I heard her hurried little footsteps, the sound of her sandals tapping on the pavement. She was running after me, her voice breaking with tears. I stopped in the middle of a narrow alley, my heart in knots. The thin girl with the big eyes was still clinging to the edge of my blouse, as if afraid I would disappear if she let go. The crumpled tourist map in my hand no longer mattered. The colorful streets, the mariachi tunes, all faded before that pleading gaze. Tears rolled down her dirty cheeks, but she didn't cry loudly, only sobbed softly in a trembling voice. "Don't you really recognize me, Grandma? It's me." A sharp pain pierced my chest, as if someone had squeezed my heart. Finally, I sighed and sat down on the step of an old closed shop. The cold stone under my feet didn't matter anymore. I looked at the girl and tried to keep my voice gentle. "All right, sweetheart, tell me why you're here alone. Where are your parents?" The girl shook her head, her tiny hand gripping mine, afraid I would stand up and leave. Tears welled up again, sliding down her cheeks, but she tried to hold them back as she spoke in a weak voice. "If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see my dad. Once you see him, you'll believe me." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to run away, go back to the hotel, lock the door, and pretend this encounter was the shadow of an old concrete bridge. Under the bridge by the Rio Grande, the air was heavy, humid, and cold. I saw cardboard boxes spread across the dirty ground, a torn blanket, empty plastic bottles, and a small fire pit long extinguished. It was no place to live, especially not for a child. My heart clenched, but before I could say anything, the girl let go of my hand and ran ahead. "Daddy, look who I brought!" Her voice sounded clear but nervous. A man with his back to us was digging through a pile of scrap metal. He wore a torn jacket, and his thin hands were picking out cans and bottles to drop into a large sack. When he heard her, he grunted in a rough voice. "Emily, I've told you 1,000 times not to bother people." He didn't turn right away. He slowly straightened up, wiped his hands on his worn jeans, and finally turned around. In that instant, time seemed to stop. Even though his hair was messy and his unshaven face was covered with scruff, even though his body was so thin it looked like only skin and bones, I recognized him immediately. It was Michael, my only son. The purse I was holding slipped from my hand and hit the ground with a dull thud. I froze, unable to speak. My mouth went dry, my head was spinning. It couldn't be. My Michael, my strong, energetic boy, the one who used to laugh out loud in my kitchen whenever I made his favorite family chili stew. But those tired red eyes were still his. When Michael saw me, I clearly noticed the color drain from his face. First came surprise, as if he couldn't believe I was really there. Then came fear, and finally, deep shame. He quickly pushed Emily behind himself, protecting her instinctively. He lowered his head and murmured in a near whisper, "I'm sorry. We have nothing to give you. Please, go away." I knew instantly he was pretending not to recognize me. He didn't want me to see him like that, ragged, dirty, living under a bridge like a drifter. But I couldn't let him push me away again. I stepped forward, ignoring the damp ground beneath my feet. My legs trembled, but I couldn't stop. I raised my hand, wanting to touch his face, to make sure I wasn't dreaming. But my hand hung in the air, unable to reach him. My voice broke with pain. "Michael, don't cry. Grandma's here. She'll help us, right, Grandma?" Minutes later, I sat on a cold stone under the bridge, watching Michael use the torn sleeve of his shirt to wipe Emily's dirty face. His hands were shaking, but he was gentle, as if afraid to hurt her. That image broke my heart. My Michael, the tall, strong young man who had always smiled like a ray of sunshine, was now only a shadow of the man he once was. Thin, exhausted, covered in dust, his clothes torn and filthy, his hair matted, his thick beard making him almost unrecognizable. Only his eyes remained the same, tired, but still filled with the kindness of the son I had raised for 30 years. Emily nestled against her father, clutching her broken doll, her big eyes looking at me as if pleading for help. I wanted to hug them both, to protect them from that cold, damp place. But then the memory of that terrible day 3 years ago hit me like a wave, clear, painful, unstoppable. It was a Saturday afternoon. The sky was clear, the sun gentle. I was in my small kitchen in Austin, stirring a pot of family chili stew, Michael's favorite dish. He had loved it since he was a child. I smiled, thinking about dinner that night, when the whole family would be together again, laughing and talking like in the old days. Emily, who was only 3 years old back then, would surely be happy to see her little bowl filled with cilantro. I had also prepared a plate of sliced lemons and radishes, just the way Michael liked it. But then, the front door burst open so suddenly that I jumped and almost dropped the wooden spoon from my hand. I heard heavy, hurried footsteps, and then Michael appeared at the kitchen door, followed by Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. Her eyes were red as if she'd been crying, but I immediately recognized the way she clung to Michael, like an actress playing the victim. Michael threw his car keys onto the dining table, the sharp clink making me stop in place. His face was tense, his eyes burning with anger. It was a look I had never seen in my son before. "Mom, come here. We need to talk," he said coldly. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked into the living room, my heart already uneasy. "What's wrong, Michael? Why are you so upset?" I tried to keep my voice calm, though something inside me sensed the worst. He didn't answer right away. Vanessa was lazy, nor that she only knew how to spend money. Before I could explain, Vanessa spoke through her sobs, clinging to Michael like a frightened child seeking protection. "I told you, honey, please don't make this worse," Vanessa said softly, her voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. "It's just, I can't take it anymore. This morning, your mother didn't let me take Emily to the park. She said it was a waste of gas. She wiped away her tears, but behind that sad expression, I could clearly see the calculation in her eyes. I tried to stay calm, though my voice was shaking. I only said that traffic is terrible on weekends, Vanessa. I never meant to forbid you from going. But Michael cut me off sharply, his tone filled with anger, as if I were lying. Enough, Mom. Vanessa already told me everything. You said her family is poor, that you always criticize her, that you control my money, and that giving money to my wife is something only an idiot would do. Each word felt like a knife to my chest. I couldn't understand how things had gone so far. I had only ever wanted the best for my son, for him and Vanessa to live in peace, for Emily to grow up in a happy home. But my words no longer mattered. Michael wasn't listening. He believed only his wife's tears. I stepped forward, wanting to take his hand, to tell him that I never meant to hurt him, but he pulled away, his gaze cold, as if I were a stranger, not his mother. From now on, stay out of my life, he said through clenched teeth, every word like a hammer pounding against my soul. Even if I starve to death on the street, I'll never come back to you. That sentence froze my heart. I stood still in the middle of the living room while the smell of family chili stew from the kitchen turned dull, empty, meaningless. Michael turned around, took Vanessa's hand, and went straight upstairs. I heard the closet door slam open, followed by the frantic sound of things being thrown into a suitcase. I ran up the stairs and stopped in the doorway, just in time to witness a heartbreaking scene. Michael and Vanessa were packing clothes and belongings as if they couldn't bear to stay another second in that house. Emily was curled up on the bed, clutching her little doll, crying on. Laughter became a vast, suffocating, silent place. I called Michael, but he never answered. I sent him messages, but none were returned. I went to his friends' homes, to the places where I thought he might be. No one knew anything. Each day I sank deeper into pain and guilt. I kept asking myself what I had done wrong. What word or gesture had pushed him so far away? Some nights I would sit in the kitchen staring at the pot of family chili stew, cold and untouched, which I kept cooking out of habit, hoping that one day Michael would return. Until one night my phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen from Vanessa's number. My hands trembled as I opened it, hoping for an explanation, maybe a chance to start over. But what I read felt like a final stab in the heart. Don't contact us again. We are arranging to move to the United Kingdom. Michael says he doesn't want a mother like you. Forget about us. I read those words over and over again. Each one cut deeper than the last. I fell to the floor, tears streaming uncontrollably. I truly believed I had lost my son forever. The damp smell of the nearby Rio Grande snapped me back to reality, mixed with the heavy, cold air under the bridge. Emily clung to me, her tiny hand gripping the edge of my coat as if she feared I might disappear. Michael stood in front of me, his thin shoulders trembling beneath his worn-out jacket. I looked into his eyes, those eyes that once shone with life and hope, and saw only exhaustion and regret. I couldn't bear to see him like that. I reached into my purse and took out a bottle of water and a sweet bread roll I had bought for Emily. Eat, son, I said softly but firmly. Emily needs you to stay strong. Michael took the bread. His hand trembled. His calloused fingers were covered in dust. He tore off a small piece and chewed it slowly, as if even eating was a burden. Emily watched him with worried eyes, then whispered to me, "Grandma, Daddy doesn't like bread. He always says he'd rather save it for me." The innocence in her words pierced straight through my heart. I squeezed her hand gently, fighting back my tears. "I know, sweetheart. But now Daddy has to eat so he can be strong enough to come home with us." They'd help us get good jobs, a new life. I believed her. I thought it was a chance for Emily to have a better future. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath as if trying to hold back the pain. To make the process faster, she asked me to sign a bunch of papers. She said it was just authorizations so she could represent the family at the embassy and prove we had enough financial stability. I didn't read them carefully, Mom. I trusted her completely. A wave of anger ran through me, but not toward Michael, toward myself. I had seen the signs long ago, the way Vanessa was always sweet in front of me but cold when I wasn't around, the way she constantly tried to come between my son and me. But I had done nothing, thinking they were just small issues between a husband and wife. I shook my head, my voice trembling. And then what happened, son? What did she do? Michael's voice grew quieter, as if each word was a painful confession. I took out all my savings, Mom. I sold the car, the one we bought together after so many years of hard work. I gave her everything. She said she needed the money for the paperwork, the plane tickets, and the initial expenses for our move to the United Kingdom. I didn't question anything. I thought she was doing it all for our family. He let out a bitter laugh. But a week before the flight, I received a notice from the court. Vanessa had already filed for divorce. In the petition, she claimed that I abused her and Emily. I froze. It felt like the blood in my veins turned to ice. Abuse? You? I almost shouted, unable to believe what I was hearing. My Michael, the son who had always been so gentle with Emily, who had never raised his voice at anyone, accused of abuse. I gripped Emily's little hand tightly, as if I could shield her from those lies. How dare she? I whispered, my voice shaking with fury. Michael shook his head, his red eyes full of pain. I didn't have money to hire a lawyer, Mom. All the property was in her name because of that authorization paper I signed. I was left with nothing. The judge ruled in her favor. I still foolishly believed it was just a legal procedure for the move to the United Kingdom, because that's what she told me. I thought she must have some reason that she'd explain later. He stopped and covered his head with his hands, as if trying to push away the memories. Emily nestled. Plane tickets. I sat there holding Emily, waiting. 1 hour passed. Then 2. They announced the last boarding call for our flight. I called her, but her phone was already turned off. I ran to the counter, completely desperate. They told me her name was on the passenger list and that the plane had already taken off. A chill ran down my spine. The image of Michael and Emily sitting in the airport, confused and waiting, while Vanessa had already left with everything, made me want to scream. She left you both, didn't she? I asked, though deep down I already knew the answer. Michael nodded. His voice trembled. The next day, while we were still at the terminal with nowhere to go, she called me from an unknown number. He paused, took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to continue. She laughed on the phone, Mom. A cold laugh, like she was enjoying my pain. She said, "See? You were a fool to trust me and doubt your own mother. This is the price of your stupidity. Don't ever try to find me again." When he said that, Michael broke down completely. He fell onto my shoulder and cried like a child. His muffled sobs, full of anguish, filled the silence under the bridge. Emily was crying too, clutching her father and whispering in a trembling voice, "Daddy, don't cry. Mommy wasn't good, but now we have Grandma." I wrapped my arms around both of them, tears streaming down my face without end. My rage toward Vanessa burned inside me like a fire ready to consume everything. But more than anger, I felt a deep, overwhelming sadness for Michael, my naive son, who had trusted the wrong person and lost everything because of it. I stood up and helped them to their feet. "Come on," I said firmly, though I was trembling inside. "You're coming home with me. No more bridges, no more trash, no more hunger. I won't let you suffer another day." Michael hesitated, shame filling his eyes. "Mom, I don't deserve it. I hurt you. I said terrible things. I can't—" But I interrupted him, gripping his hand tightly. "You're my son. Nothing in this world can change that. Come, Michael, come home." I took them both to the bus terminal in Santa Fe, holding Emily's hand while Michael walked behind us, his head lowered to avoid people, highlighting lines of suffering that hadn't existed 3 years ago. His eyes looked tired, but I knew he was trying to hide the storm within. In the silence of the night journey, while the sound of the engine hummed like a distant song, Michael began to speak in a hoarse voice, as if every word cost him enormous effort. "The first days were the worst, Mom," he began without taking his eyes off the dark window. "I didn't have any documents. Vanessa took everything, my ID, our family records, even Emily's birth certificate. I couldn't rent a room or get a decent job." I listened while gently stroking Emily's hair, but inside I felt like I was suffocating. The image of my son, the same one who once drove the small delivery truck proudly, distributing sweets from our family factory, now wandering without a single paper, broke my heart. "What did you do to survive every day?" I asked with a trembling voice, though part of me was afraid to hear the answer. Michael took a deep breath, as if gathering strength. "I went to a construction site on the outskirts, asking for work as a helper. I thought at least I was healthy enough to do hard labor, but the foreman just looked me up and down and waved me off. 'If you don't have papers, go somewhere else. I don't want trouble,' he said." I stood there in the dust, feeling invisible. Nobody needed me. Nobody even wanted to look at me. His voice cracked, and I saw his shoulders tremble. That first night, Emily and I slept on a park bench. It was cold, and she hugged her old doll, the one her mother left her, shivering nonstop. Around midnight, it started raining. I had to carry her and run to shelter under the roof of a closed store. She cried, calling for her mother, and all I could do was hold her tighter. But inside, I felt helpless. I bit my lips, holding back tears. The image of little Emily, trembling under the rain and calling for her mother, shattered my heart. "Why didn't you call me, Michael?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "With just one call, I would have come right away." He looked at me with red, tear-filled eyes. "I wanted to, Mom," he said, his voice trembling with regret. "So many times I picked up the phone to call you, but I couldn't do it. I knew that if I called, you'd come right away. But then I remembered the words I said that day. Even if hand, wanting to give him some strength, some faith that everything would be all right." Michael bowed his head, and tears rolled down his cheeks. "I don't deserve it, Mom. I made Emily suffer. Once she had a high fever. She was delirious, calling for her mother. I had no money to take her to a doctor. All I could do was soak a cloth in the river and put it on her forehead while I prayed. I thought I was going to lose her." His voice broke, and Emily, though asleep, stirred a little, as if she could feel her father's pain. I held Emily tighter, and my tears fell onto her hair. "You did everything you could, Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't abandon her, even when everything was against you. I'm proud of you for not giving up." I knew my words couldn't erase his pain, but I wanted him to understand that I would never blame him. Michael continued to speak in a tired, sorrowful voice. "A homeless man took us under a bridge. He said at least there we wouldn't get wet. Every morning I left Emily with an old woman who sold lottery tickets. She was kind, but also poor. She could only give her a little bread and water. Then I walked through the alleys collecting bottles and cans to sell. When I was lucky, I earned enough to buy a small carton of milk and some bread. But sometimes I found nothing, and we had to share a piece of stale bread from the day before. Emily never complained, Mom. She'd just hug her doll and say, 'Daddy, tomorrow will be a better day, right?' I couldn't hold back any longer. Tears streamed silently down my face. I imagined Emily, only 6 years old, living through those days, learning to endure hunger and cold when she should have been playing, studying, and growing up in a warm home. I looked down at her sleeping peacefully in my arms, her little face still dirty but calm. "She's strong, Michael," I said softly, "and so are you. You both survived. Now that I'm here, everything will be different." When the bus stopped at the Austin station, dawn was breaking. The first light of morning spread softly over the familiar streets where I had lived my whole life. I led my son and granddaughter home, walking through the still empty streets as the smell of freshly baked bread began to waft from the bakeries. Michael walked behind me, hesitant, as if he could. Old sofa in the living room, and she asked in a small, timid voice, "Daddy, can we sleep here tonight?" I picked her up and hugged her tightly, feeling her little body tremble with emotion. I couldn't hold back the tears rolling down my cheeks any longer. "Not just tonight, Emily," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "From now on, this is your home. No one will ever throw you out again." I looked over at Michael, who was still standing in the doorway, his eyes red and filled with emotion. The first thing I did was prepare a bathtub with warm water in the small bathroom. I carefully brought Emily inside, helping her take off her old dirty clothes. When I saw her thin body, the faint purple marks on her arms and legs, my heart ached. I washed her gently, afraid to hurt her. She stayed still, her big eyes watching me, and smiled shyly when the soap bubbles settled on her hair. "Grandma, the warm water feels so nice," she whispered in a soft, uncertain voice. I smiled, trying to hide my tears. "From now on, sweetheart, you'll be able to take a warm bath every single day," I said, stroking her wet hair. In the closet, I found a small pink dress I had bought 2 years earlier, back when I still had hope that Emily would come back one day. I thought I'd never see it worn, but when I saw her in that dress, radiant like a little flower, my heart filled with warmth. Michael also took a shower and shaved the thick beard that covered his face. When he came out of the bathroom wearing his late father's old clothes, too big but clean, I almost didn't recognize him. He was still thin, but the darkness in his eyes had faded. He was once again the son who used to laugh out loud in the kitchen while I taught him how to wrap coconut candies. "Mom, do I look okay?" he asked in an uncertain voice, afraid of my judgment. I walked over, placed my hand on his shoulder, and smiled. "You'll always be my handsome boy," I said, my voice breaking. He lowered his head and smiled faintly, but I could see the guilt that still lingered inside him. The first meal at home after 3 years apart, I cooked with all my love, a big pot of family chili stew, just like in the old days. The aroma of corn, pork, and dried chilies filled the kitchen, reminding me of the times when our family was whole. Emily sat at the table, her eyes sparkling at the sight of a bowl full of
for 3 generations. The scent of caramel, lemon peel, and shredded coconut had always been a part of my life. At first, Michael kept himself busy with small tasks around the workshop, sweeping the floor, carrying sacks of sugar and flour. He worked tirelessly, as if he wanted to redeem himself through effort alone. I let him do it without saying a word, but every time I saw him soaked in sweat, a knot formed in my chest. "Take a break, son," I told him one afternoon as he wiped his forehead, but he just shook his head. "I have to keep going, Mom. I owe you too much." Meanwhile, Emily adjusted quickly to her new life. I enrolled her in an elementary school near the house. She was bright and eager to learn, and within a few weeks she had already caught up with her classmates. Every afternoon when I went to pick her up, she would run to me, hug me tightly, and start telling me about her day. "Grandma, today my teacher said I drew the best picture in class," she said, proudly showing me a colorful, clumsy little drawing. Her laughter seemed to bring the light back into the house, chasing away the silence that had filled it for 3 long years. One day, while I was struggling with my order book, trying to calculate how many candies to make for the following week, the numbers danced before my tired eyes. Michael came in, saw me struggling, and said, "Let me handle that, Mom. I have a faster way." I was surprised, but let him try. He sat down at my old computer and began typing. In just a few days, Michael had built a simple website for the workshop. He took pictures of our freshly made sweets and uploaded them online, adding short notes about our family recipes. "Mom, people shop online now," he said excitedly. "We need to keep up." I looked at my son and couldn't help but feel proud. Despite all the pain he had lived through, Michael was still smart, creative, and full of ideas. Soon the orders started coming in. At first, just a few from within the city, but gradually word spread. People began talking about a family brand that not only offered delicious sweets, but also carried a touching story of reunion. Michael even designed new packaging, simple but professional, with the image of a grandmother making candies beside a smiling little girl. That was Emily and me. He reached out to delivery services, expanded to other states, and soon the phone wouldn't stop. "You. If it weren't for you, Emily and I—" His voice broke and he couldn't finish. I placed my hand on his shoulder and smiled. "You don't have to say anything," I told him softly. "Having you and Emily here with me is all I need." He smiled, a real smile, the first one I'd seen in 3 years. In that moment, I knew the wounds of the past were beginning to heal, but deep down I still felt regret. If only I had set my pride aside and gone looking for Michael sooner, maybe he and Emily wouldn't have had to endure so many years of pain. I promised myself that from now on, I would never let anyone or anything hurt this family again. Our life slowly returned to normal. Bennett's homemade sweets began to thrive so much that an American company reached out to discuss importing our coconut and milk candies. I watched Michael working, negotiating with partners, managing orders, and I saw how he was gradually regaining his confidence. Emily was growing too, turning into a bright, joyful little girl who filled the house with light and laughter. But one sunny afternoon, when the workshop was full of customers coming and going, a taxi stopped in front of the gate. The sound of the tires on the pavement made me look up, a strange uneasiness creeping through me. A woman stepped out of the car wearing a tight dress and sunglasses that covered almost her entire face. Michael, who was carrying a box toward the truck, froze in place. His hands dropped to his sides. Emily, sitting on the doorstep reading a comic book, looked up, her eyes wide with shock. The woman slowly removed her sunglasses, revealing a face I could never forget. Vanessa, the ghost of our past, had returned. Standing in front of my house, she wore that same cold smile that told me another storm was about to begin. The noise in the workshop died instantly. The laughter and chatter vanished, replaced by curious stares. Vanessa stood there in her fitted dress and dark glasses. She was smiling, but I could see the ice in her eyes. It was a mask to hide intentions that I knew could only bring trouble. I stepped outside and stood protectively in front of Emily. Michael dropped the box he was holding and moved in front of his daughter. Emily clung to the back of his shirt. "Daddy, who is that?" she whispered. "Emily, sweetheart." Vanessa's voice came out.
Emily. She glanced toward the workshop filled with customers. "This place should be half mine, Michael. Did you forget we were once married?" Michael almost lunged at her, his fists clenched, his face red with anger. "You have no right." But I grabbed his arm to stop him. I stared directly at her. "You're not getting a single cent, and you're not getting near my granddaughter. Leave now, before I call the police." Vanessa laughed, an ugly, high-pitched laugh. "Let's see what an old woman like you can do. Expect a court summons soon. Emily is my daughter, and I'm taking back what's mine." She turned sharply, got back into the taxi, and drove away. The customers hurried to pay and leave. The workshop suddenly felt eerily empty. Emily looked up at me. "Grandma, is she my mom? Why did she say that?" I knelt and hugged her. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Grandma and Daddy won't let anyone take you away." A few days later, while checking orders on the website, a notification popped up. An account named New Mommy 101 had posted a warning. "Attention, everyone. My son have a stomachache after eating candies from Bennett's homemade sweets. I don't know what ingredients they use." I felt my blood boil. Before I could reply, more comments started pouring in from fake accounts. I noticed a strange taste too. They say they use chemical sugar. Michael replied, explaining that all our ingredients were carefully checked and certified, but his comment was quickly buried under a wave of criticism. 2 days later, a video appeared online. A woman was crying beside the bed of a child hooked up to an IV. She sobbed. "Just because I trusted a family brand, now my son is hospitalized. Please, boycott this cruel bakery." Beside her lay a box with our logo. The video spread fast. A news portal ran a headline reading, "The truth behind the family candy shop, dirty ingredients." The phone wouldn't stop ringing, with insults, threats, and cancellations. Partner stores stopped doing business with us. The American company suspended their deal. Patricia, my neighbor, now crossed the street to avoid me. One night, I found rotten eggs smashed against our door. The workshop grew silent again. Our candies sat untouched on the shelves. No one came to buy them. At the very end. "Mom, aren't you scared?"
I smiled faintly. "Of course I'm scared, son. But I'm even more afraid of losing you and Emily. I already lost you once. I won't let it happen again." I went to my room and opened my late husband's old chest. Inside, I found his old address book. I flipped through the pages until I saw the number I was looking for and dialed it. Mr. Anderson, this is Mrs. Bennet. I need your help. My family is in serious trouble. I told him everything about Vanessa, the rumors, the threats. Calm down, Mrs. Bennet, he said firmly. I'll come tomorrow. We'll take care of this. The next morning, Mr. Anderson arrived with Ms. Harris, a young attorney with sharp, intelligent eyes. Mrs. Bennet, this is Ms. Harris, he said. She's going to help us. We told them everything from the beginning. Ms. Harris listened carefully, taking notes. When exactly did you get divorced, Mr. Michael? She asked. Did you sign any additional agreements? I don't really remember, Michael said, rubbing his forehead. I was in shock. I just signed whatever she put in front of me. All right, Ms. Harris said calmly. The first thing we need is to retrieve that divorce file. It's the key to everything. Mr. Anderson nodded with determination. And as for Vanessa, she couldn't have organized such an online smear campaign alone. I'll find out who helped her. 2 days later, Mr. Anderson called, his voice full of excitement. Mrs. Bennet, we've got her. All the accounts are fake. We have recordings from an internet cafe showing Vanessa posting the messages. I also went to Austin General Hospital. The boy has asthma, not food poisoning. His mother admitted she was paid to lie. I felt both fury and relief wash over me. Ms. Harris and I went to the Austin County Court. After a long morning, we obtained a copy of the divorce file. Sitting at a cafe afterward, Ms. Harris suddenly stopped turning the pages. Mrs. Bennet, look at this, she said. It was a signed declaration from Vanessa. I, Vanessa Mitchell, after receiving all assets belonging to Mr. Michael Bennet, agree never to request alimony or claim any rights over Mr. Reporters, smiling confidently. I took Michael's hand. Stay calm, son. The truth is on our side. Vanessa's lawyer began with a fabricated story. He called a witness, a woman who tearfully testified that her son had nearly died after eating our candies. When it was our turn, Ms. Harris stood up gracefully and presented our evidence. Bennett's homemade sweets have been in business for over 60 years without a single case of food poisoning. All ingredients are verified and certified for safety. Then she produced the medical reports from Austin General Hospital. This child was admitted for asthma, not poisoning. This woman received a payment from Vanessa Mitchell to create a false story. We have proof of that transaction. The courtroom fell silent. Then Ms. Harris raised another document. Your Honor, this signed agreement from 3 years ago proves that Vanessa Mitchell renounced all rights to Mr. Michael Bennett's property. Her return, demanding custody and assets, constitutes both fraud and defamation. She presented further evidence of Vanessa's debts and the article that had inspired her comeback. Mrs. Mitchell did not return out of love, but out of greed. She orchestrated an entire campaign to destroy the reputation of Bennett's homemade sweets. Vanessa turned pale. No, that's not true, she stammered. But her signature was real. The judge banged the gavel. The claims made by Mrs. Vanessa Mitchell are hereby dismissed. The defendant has the right to file a counterclaim. The reporters turned their cameras toward Vanessa. She covered her face and fled the courtroom. When we stepped outside, the sun was shining brightly. Patricia ran up to me, breathless. Mrs. Bennet, please forgive me. We were so foolish to believe all those rumors. I smiled gently. Don't worry, Patricia. It's all over now. I took Ms. Harris's hand. Thank you, Ms. Harris. If it hadn't been for you and Mr. Anderson, I don't know what would have happened to my family. Mrs. Bennet, you are the strongest mother I've ever met, she said warmly. Mr. Anderson patted Michael on the shoulder. You're a good man, Michael. Don't let your past define you. When we arrived home, Emily was playing in the yard. The moment she saw us, she ran toward us, laughing. Grandma, Daddy, my teacher praised me today for my us. But if we keep loving-kindness alive, we can always start again. Pain teaches us to see what's real and what's false. I no longer blame Vanessa, because those wounds are what made me stronger. And if there's something I want to tell anyone who feels lost in suffering and loss, it's this: never believe it's over. Sometimes, among the ruins, is where we find our way back home. The story you've just heard has had its names and places changed to protect the identity of those involved. We share it not to judge, but in the hope that someone listening might stop and reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I ask you sincerely, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you have the courage to face everything and reclaim your voice? I'd love to know your thoughts, because every story can be a candle that lights another person's path. God always blesses us, and I truly believe that courage can guide us toward brighter days. For now, at the end of this video, I'll leave you with two of the most beloved stories on the channel. I'm sure they'll surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.